Good morning, everyone. Key Lime here with another weekly preview video. We have some really interesting stuff going on this week, so it's definitely worth checking out what we've got going on. So I'll start with the PC, Xbox, PS4 side of things. This morning I actually did get a weapon offer, so this was the first $5 weapon offer that was there. At least based on what I'm seeing in guild chat, it looks like it should be an interesting one for just about everybody. I had Divine Protector offered, somebody else had some other awesome one that was rare. I think it was Yasmin's Pride, actually. So it appears as though today might be a high value weapon that you get offered today. Again, those offers are weapons that you do not have. So please make sure to check those out. I'm sure the game will throw it in your face a bunch. Honestly, I know spending money in this game is not always the most fun thing in the world, but those weapons are pretty epic. So feel free to leave a comment in the YouTube channel asking me if the weapon that's there is any good or not. I'll be happy to give you my advice on that kind of stuff. But yeah, the first version of those was in there. I, as you can tell, actually did jump in on that one. Just being offered Divine Protector for me was pretty great. So what else we got going on is for event keys, we have Broken Spire. So for Broken Spire, we actually have somebody that you might be familiar with sitting in Broken Spire, which is our friend Infernus. So if you're opening up event keys this week, Infernus is in there. Of course, Infernus is quite awesome. Burning all enemies on 4/5s, doing damage to a bunch of people, exploding gems, loot potential. I rated him as an S tier mythic. So if you do not have Infernus, event keys are your friend for this week. So make sure you jump in there. As far as any other troops that you'd really want from Broken Spire, there's pretty much nothing. So Infernus is pretty much the only guy you want. There's some minor utility in having Shegra, but for the most part, you're interested in Infernus. So that's what's going on in your event keys this time around. Then we also got some new troops going on. So we got Mr. Stonebiter. I should have typed in way more words than just stone, apparently. Mr. Stonebiter. So he's our invasion troop this week. So what he's all about is doing damage to a tower, and then if an enemy dies, he gains 7 to all skill points. I mean, that's okay. It's whatever. I mean, he seems like a fairly run-of-the-mill kind of dude. They seem to want you to run him in the first slot specifically, and of course that's not such a bad idea because he has Siegebreaker, which will do 3 to 5 times skull damage based on ascensions. So as far as event troops go, he's okay. I mean, I'm not overly thrilled about him, but he exists, so that's pretty cool. So he's our dude for that event. And then what we got as far as the glory troops here is Lava Troll. So this is kind of an interesting new troll type. So before we've seen just double the amount and then add 3 more, and then we've seen add a mix of X number of gems. So now this dude is just taking the number of red and brown gems that are currently on the board and then doubling them. So that's kind of interesting. I'll have to play around with him personally to see how that's going to work. He's pretty cool in that he's like other trolls, he gets a really decent amount of skull reduction. So he is actually somebody you could run at the top of your lineup, potentially. I'll have to play around with him personally. I've always found when it creates 2 different kinds of gems, I feel like the odds of you actually getting a 4-5 match out of it is lower for some reason. So we'll have to find out ultimately if that guy ends up being worth it. I'm going to get him to Mythic just because he's a mana generator. He's a giant, so he's going to certainly synergize with Titan. So I'd say it's worth getting. I don't know if you need to get him to Mythic like I just did, but definitely feel like he is worth a look. Beyond all of that, of course, we do have an invasion this time around. So make sure you jump in there. By your tiers, I generally always recommend going up to this level. The weapon this time around is Shegra's Spine. So this one's also kind of cool. It's doing a mix of blue and brown gems for giant allies. So there's a decent amount of giant allies you could potentially get. This weapon's kind of interesting in that it also burns folks. Burning folks is always cool as far as I'm concerned. So not a terrible weapon, and certainly for the event, it won't be the worst thing in the world. It's an interesting color mix as well. I don't remember seeing many Christmas-colored weapons or troops or anything that I've used, aside from Yao, actually. So Shegra's Spine is honestly not the worst weapon in the world, and again, since it's giants, it's going to be easier for you to line it up with your troops since it does burn people and is giants, if you do run Warlord class for whatever reason, that might actually be a pretty decent synergy there. So yeah, it's the new weapon this time around. As far as what we've got going on inside the Soulforge, we've also got some interesting stuff. So this is, again, if you are not having your Flammifier weapon, it is there. So this is, I would say, one of the higher tier weapons that were the old ones that older folks, the people that played the game back in the day, might have that you may not have had. I personally did not have this either. So this weapon is available. It's very useful in a lot of lineups. It creates a good amount of red gems, which is really great. And it does do damage boosted by red gems. So the amount of damage it'll do is probably going to be pretty decent. Like upwards of like 35 to 40 would probably be about the range you would expect from the weapon. So that's not terrible. Plus the mana generation is really strong. And what I learned today, since I never had this weapon before, it actually burns the first enemy, so that's legit. As somebody who runs Sunspear a lot and is planning on running Dragon Guard a lot, that's actually going to allow me to potentially put together lineups that don't have anyone burning necessarily in my team, but I could use this weapon potentially to create burning to then do triple skull damage. So if you don't have Flammifier, I personally would strongly recommend getting it. It's one of those weapons I think that when you don't have it, you probably will regret it. And then also what's available is Doom Club. So this is one of those weapons where it's doing damage to all enemies and then converting all green gems to Doom Skulls. So as far as doomed weapons go, I would say all of these are kind of some of the highest tier weapons in the game. The amount of damage potential that they have is just so strong in the fact that they convert things to Doom Skulls and then they also do damage to all. I would definitely recommend getting this if you do not have it. So if you're jumping into the Soulforge this time from a weapon perspective, really, really good stuff going on in there. From the troops point of view, there's really nothing, from a mythic point of view, there's nothing I would really recommend you do. Of all the mythics available, I would say that Elamagrum and Phoenicia would be potentially worth your time. But that's really only if you already have some of the higher tier mythics. So if there's a very specific mythic you're saving for, I would not necessarily recommend crafting any of these. However, Elamagrum and Phoenicia would probably be the highest value things that are sitting in there. I wouldn't really recommend crafting pretty much anything else in the Soulforge. So that's pretty cool. And then beyond all of that, as I grab my tribute this morning, we also have a new class coming on Friday. So as far as what the new class is all about, it's a Fey troop called the Hierophant. So the Hierophant is kind of an interesting class. I'm still trying to figure out how much I'm going to like them or not. So it has access to the Fire Tree, which is pretty cool. That means it's going to have Fire Blades, so triple skull damage on burning enemies. So that's pretty interesting. Beyond that, it's going to have Light and then Life. So Light, if you're not familiar, is very good at, it'll start with a yellow storm, a light storm. Sorry, I couldn't think of it as I was speaking. It's going to start with a light storm. You're going to get bonus yellow mana, some decent life pumping as some of its stats, and then it's also going to have access to the life tree, which is going to get you things like being able to cleanse yourself, potentially gaining life on green mana. So this is going to be a weird class. It actually has like a decent balance of like offense and defense, which is pretty interesting. The only thing that I'm not so excited about is that it's a Fey troop. I've said it in some other videos, but there's really not a lot of Fey troops or a lot of Fey synergy with other troops. So that's kind of the unfortunate thing from that perspective. But I think this class is going to be interesting. It's not going to have access to some of the things that we really like on classes. So it's not going to have access to explosions on 4/5s. It's not going to have access to 50% mana start. It gets a little bit of spell reduction, so that's not all that exciting. And then its third trait isn't also very exciting either, in that it's got a 25% chance to grant a random positive status effect to a random ally. So, I mean, it's hard to rate this very highly. The fact that it's a 25% chance honestly feels kind of like grossly low as far as this class is concerned. Even if this was a 100% chance, this wouldn't even necessarily be that overpowered either. Like, I don't know, this class feels strange to me. I like the fact that it's a weird blend of trees that I haven't seen together before. I like the idea of fire being mixed with these like life things, but at the same time, the class traits themselves are not all that exciting. So when I'm looking at this class, there's nothing that's jumping out at me is that like I'm going to absolutely love this class. I'm kind of feeling like this is going to be like a lower B tier, maybe upper C tier kind of class. Like this doesn't feel like it's got the right tools to be useful. The troop type's not all that interesting. The talent trees are pretty interesting, but it's missing some of the like cornerstones of good classes, like either 50% mana start and explosion on 4/5s. It's just not. It's not bringing any of that, and its class traits don't seem all that interesting. So, not to be a downer, but I'm assuming the Hierophant class is not going to be all that exciting. It does have the Fire Tree, which does get access to Fireblade, which I put as one of the highest tier talents you can possibly get. But beyond that, I like that it'll cleanse itself, but there's not a whole lot else that I'm super pumped about with this class. So we'll have to see. When it pops out, I'll give it a try, of course. But that's going to be coming out later on this Friday. So that's everything that's going on from the PC side of things. A lot of really cool stuff. So absolutely make sure you get those weapons in the Soulforge if they're interesting to you. Make sure you're fishing for Infernus in the event keys if you don't have them. I was actually able to get Broken Spire to level 10 today, so I was able to get another stat point, so that was pretty cool. And the weapon offer is obviously going to be there to tempt you if that's a thing you're interested in. But yeah, that's everything that's going on, at least from the PC side of things. So let us now jump over to the Switch. On the Switch side of things, we're actually getting some pretty decent stuff. So in the event keys this time around, you guys can open up stuff from the Shentang Kingdom. So in Shentang, there's actually a really high value troop in there that I cannot recommend enough that you guys actually try and get. So if you have event keys to spend, this is the man you might be fishing for. So Yao is someone who's super strong. He's from a mana perspective. He doesn't cost that much, and I would argue he's probably the best legendary that you can get as far as the game is concerned, and that's even on the PC side. Of all the legendaries that exist, he's probably one of the highest value, if not the highest value. So from a Y perspective, he's dealing damage to 2 people, which is pretty cool, and it's boosted by his life. So the boost is 3-1, my guy's got about 66, so for me this would be doing about 50 damage on the first shot to 2 people. But then he's also stealing 4 magic from both of those people that he hits, so the next time you cast him, he's going to be doing at least an extra 8. And then on top of that, he's also transforming all purple to red, so it's possible that you can loop Yao into Yao into Yao. If you have the right kind of team lineup, that's something you could potentially be doing. So the amount of like life he steals, the amount of magic he steals is really, really strong. So the amount of value that this guy brings to the table just by adding him to a lineup is really good. The life stealing piece that I was talking about is coming from this final talent, or trait, I should say. So he's stealing 3 life from the first enemy every single time you match red gems. So he has a passive way of kind of like building himself up. Obviously, you're going to be matching a bunch of red if you have Yao in your lineup. So transforming all purple to red, doing damage to 2, stealing magic from 2, stealing life from the first one. He does a ton of stuff, and he only costs 15 mana to get him off. So really strong troop. So if you have event keys to spare, I strongly recommend chasing for Yao. The only other person that's really in there that's worth looking at is Emperor Liang. So he's not the best, admittedly. You can do some weird stuff with him. Like, so he's going to destroy all gems of a chosen color and then give a bunch of people health and then give people magic. So from that perspective, it's pretty cool. Like, having someone that can kind of just give you additional magic is pretty fun. It's not a ton, though, so it's kind of tough. But he also does this other weird thing where he's exchanging 2 of his life for 2 magic on every 4 or 5. So unfortunately, the amount of magic he's going to build for himself is only going to affect the amount of life, not the amount of magic. So the amount of healing he's going to end up doing is pretty high. So obviously, if you destroy purple or yellow, then the amount of life that he's losing to magic is going to be something you can fill back up with himself. So generally, you would probably want to put him on either like a purple or a yellow lineup, so you're kind of keeping himself alive along with keeping everybody else alive or giving them additional life. And then magic pumping. He's also going to be enchanting people on 4 or 5 matches. So generally, when you're playing with Emperor Liang on your team, you'll be getting a bunch of enchants for your side. So I think what ends up happening with him is that I don't use him nearly as often. Admittedly, he's not someone that I use all that often. He looks like a super crazy like anime villain, like in Bleach he looks like Aizen or something like that, or whatever that dude's name was, the dude with the glasses. You know who I'm talking about if you've seen the show. So pretty decent guy, but he's not the one you want to be chasing, admittedly. You want to be chasing for Yao. Like, get Yao this week if at all possible. He's extremely good. You'll be very sad if you don't have him. Beyond all of that, you also get Crimson Arrow. So for the invasion event for you guys this time around, Crimson Arrow is a troop that's doing damage to an enemy, and if his attack is higher than that enemy, he'll do 15 more. And then if they have a hunter's mark on them, he'll do 15 more. So the amount of just like straight nuke damage you can do is pretty decent. Admittedly, it requires a lot of conditions to do it. Like, his attack isn't the highest thing in the planet, but it's also not the lowest. So the odds of you having higher attack than the enemy isn't the worst thing in the world. He's an okay troop. He starts battles with 75% mana, so it's pretty quick to get him to do stuff. This placing a hunter's mark on the enemy when he does skull damage thing is a little deceptive as far as I'm concerned. He's not someone that I would want to put on the front of my team. He doesn't have any mana generation. He's going to be depending on only a 20% skull dodge to keep himself alive, so not so good from that perspective. He's not the worst troop in the world. He's not the best in the world. In order to get your hunter's marks, if you're trying to do that, I would strongly recommend using a class like, an archer or something like that. Something that has the hunt talent. It's in the cunning tree. They can do hunter's marks on 4/5s. With that class, you'll be able to actually create a bunch of hunter's marks, which will then synergize with him. So if he's a troop that you're trying to build into your lineup, that's something that I would recommend doing. I wouldn't rely on this to get your hunter's marks. I would rely on your classes to do that. Just real quick to show you what that looks like. So in the cunning tree, you'll see this hunt talent. This is the one that I would depend on for your hunter's marks, not so much him doing it with skull damage. So if there's classes that you like that have this cunning tree in them, I would probably recommend running them if you're looking to use Crimson Arrow in your lineups. Beyond all of that, the tower destroying troop that you guys are getting access to is Sifu. So Sifu is, from a raw damage perspective, isn't the best, so he doesn't have anything really boosting this, so that's kind of unfortunate. But again, if you get him to Mythic, he'll be doing 5x. So the amount of damage he'll be doing is like probably going to be around the 100 range, like 100 to 150, depending on how high you got him raised up. And then he's enchanting 2 allies. So enchant isn't the strongest buff in the world, but if you are having trouble with mana generation, something that can be definitely useful. Of course, you can get the 3 to 5x skull damage to towers, and the nice thing about siege breakers versus like boss killer people, so when it's a boss killer and they do 3 to 5x to the boss, it doesn't really make sense to run them in the first slot because you have to kill down to the boss. But in the invasion event, there's towers at every single line, so potentially you could think about running him in the first slot. I probably still wouldn't, but you can, of course. So that's something else that you could be doing. Running Yao in that lineup, if you get Yao and you have Sifu, and then you also run the new weapon, which to me is probably the coolest thing that you guys are getting this week, is Sky Hero. So this is a weapon that I use all the time. So please make sure you grab this if you absolutely can. There's a lot of folks on the other platforms that are very sad every time I post teams with this weapon in it and they don't have it. So please make sure you try and get this. What it does is, from a mana generation perspective, is all the yellows that you destroy in a column will create a bunch of red gems. So my general recommendation is that having 3 yellows is a pretty decent chance of you getting a 4/5. If there's 4 yellows, then you pretty much will definitely get a 4/5. And of course, if there's more than that, you'll definitely get a 4/5. So you'll be getting a ton of red mana by having this in your lineup. If you run Yao in your lineup as well, then he's going to be helping you create even more red mana on top of that. So for this event, if you can get Sifu, if you can get Yao, if you get this weapon, your lineup is pretty much done. You just need to add somebody else in there. So really strong weapon. It also cleanses yourself. It also does a little poke damage, so you can break a barrier or 2 in the event. It's a really, really nice weapon, so I can't recommend enough that you guys try and get that. But beyond all of that, what you guys are getting, I don't know why I keep closing my screen, is Megja, apparently, Megavore. So Megavore is the new mythic that you guys are going to get access to. He's going to be in VIP keys, he's going to be in gem keys, glory keys. He's not in event chests, so do not try and open up event chests trying to get Megavore. Again, event chests is just Emperor Liang and Yao. But in all of the other chests, Megavore is going to be in there. So what he's all about is destroying all the enemy armor. So the first time you use him, every single enemy on the enemy team is going to have no armor. So that's really great. And then he also does a really chunky hit to somebody. So you can almost think of this as that however much damage this says it does for you is true damage, because all the armor for everything else is going to be gone. And then he submerges himself. He goes hiding away in his little whirlpool, which is pretty fun. He's also impervious to essentially everything, so from that perspective, he's really, really hard to like get rid of. Like, he's submerged, so you can't hit him with AoE damage. You can't debuff him, so you can't entangle him or web him or silence him. Like, none of that stuff. So Megavore really high value from that perspective. But then he also gets access to this death blow, which is anytime you do a 4 or 5 match, you might just blip the last enemy out of existence, so they'll just die. So that's sick. Megavore is a really strong mythic. When I did my tier list video, I think I put him at the bottom of the A tier. I might put him at the top of the B tier if I had to re-rate it, but overall, a really, really, really nice mythic to get. I would strongly recommend you guys try and get him. He has a lot of value. Since he destroys all enemy armor regardless of how much armor they have, if you're doing high level delves, for instance, you can just zap away all armor with one cast of him, so now you're just poking at however much health they have left. A really strong troop. So he's available in all of the chests that you guys have this week. Again, not in event chests, but in all the other chests. So yeah, pretty cool week as far as stuff that you guys are getting as well. That's going to cover everything that's available on all platforms for this week. So I hope you guys have an awesome invasion. I think all of us are going to be invading towers this time around. So on all platforms, let us destroy some towers. Last week, I hope you guys had a good Guild Wars week if you're on the PC side. Lots of cool stuff going on there. But yeah, that's covering everything for this week. So I'll be chatting with you guys later on in the week. I did just start streaming on YouTube, so keep your eyes open to see if I'm going live there. I'm actually going to be popping onto Twitter to announce when I'm going live. I don't necessarily have a schedule put together just yet, but I am trying to see if I can establish some kind of consistency. I know it's not easy for folks to have somebody just randomly stream and never know when it's coming on. It'd be nicer if there was some form of schedule, but I do seem to be doing it pretty often. The videos do end up getting posted as VODs on YouTube. Let me know in the comments if you guys like that, if you like the VODs out there. I can put them in a playlist or like hide them or something if people don't want them kind of clouding things up, since this is normally more of like an information channel versus a streaming channel. But yeah, that's something else that I've got going on. So I'll throw my Twitter in there. I'll also be announcing when I'm streaming. You'll see some more streaming videos coming out of me, more guides and other fun stuff coming in the week, of course. But yeah, that's everything. So again, this is Keylime. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll be talking to you guys later on. See ya.